Hi, Ali. It is so good to see you again.
So nice to see you too.
I'm really excited to chat with you today because when I first invited you to the podcast, you were actually kind of hesitant, not because you didn't want to do it, but because you didn't know how to feel about the phrase incredibly successful, which is how I introduce the guests of Creative, Inspired, Happy. So I'm looking forward to delving into that more because by all exterior measures, you are a success. You're a New York Times bestseller many times over. You have name recognition and an actual subgenre, feminist romance, that's pretty much named after your work. However, before we get to that, I think it would be really helpful to give our listeners and viewers some background about your career. You and I share the same amazing agent, Tao Lei, so I know some of your story, but those who are not familiar, it would be really good to kind of hear about how you got started. Could you share how you began writing and how you were discovered? Because you were a neuroscience professor, so romance writing is not the first thing that would have come to my mind as a hobby.
Yes, absolutely. So I originally started writing when I was doing my PhD in neuroscience. It was very much a hobby in terms of it was the one thing in my life that didn't have anything to do with my day job at the time. So I was writing my dissertation, and you don't really have a lot of time to do other activities when you are writing your dissertation. So it was like this, reading fan fiction and then writing fan fiction were these things that I could do in scraps of time. And at the time, I was a big Trekkie, and yeah, I started first reading fan fiction, and then I had some ideas for certain stories that I wanted to write, and that's kind of how I got started with writing fiction. And then a couple of years later, our agent Tao, she loves Star Wars. So she's a huge nerd, and she was reading fan fiction online. I think she just really really likes fan fiction. I know that she used to be on Tumblr. I know that she has always been in like fandom spaces, and she was reading fan fiction, and she found my work. And I actually had put a note at the end of one of my fan fictions, the one that would become the love hypothesis. And I had said that, if people like the fan fiction, they should download it because I might pull it one day to rework it as a book. I didn't have like a timeline for that, and I wasn't thinking about it very hard, but like there was this thing in the back of my mind. I was like, I would love to do something with this because I poured all my love and just it's really a labor of love, fan fiction, but it is a labor. So I was like, maybe one day I'll do something with this. And Tao contacted me and said, I would love to help you with this. I think it might work for traditional publishing, and that's kind of how it went. And then yeah, and then and now it's been a couple of years, and it's been so fun.
I think that's so amazing. First of all, I didn't know that agents would be scouting in fan fiction forums, but it's also a thing now, right? Where agents are finding authors in self-published books on TikTok, on Instagram. So I think it's really incredible the way that publishing has changed and allowed people to write in so many different ways.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's also great because usually what happens is that agents and publishers will find successful authors that they feel don't have the distribution that they deserve, because if you're self-published, you can be so popular and you can reach truly huge levels of fame, but it's hard to get, your physical books in stores. I don't know that Target has a whole lot of self-published books on their shelves. And so it's great that everyone can have access to self-published books through this like partnership between traditional publishing and self-publishing. I really like that.
Yeah, I really love it. I've met so many self-published authors, especially in the romance space, who have done so well. And I'm really impressed by their entrepreneurship because when you are self-published, you're doing everything yourself, right? Like in traditional publishing, you and I, we have teams who are doing our publicity, our marketing, the interior font setting and layout, the cover designs, but they're doing everything. I mean, those authors who are self-published, they might hire some freelance specialist to help them, but you're still managing an entire business, which is just incredible.
It's so true. And I feel like for so many things, now that I'm a traditional published author and I have had like, I have a few books under my belt, I'm starting to have ideas and opinions and preferences about the whole process of publishing. But I feel like when I started out, and a lot of self-published authors, they don't have a background in traditional publishing. Uh, like when I started out, I would have had no idea how does one promote a book, or I have to make choices at every single step of the way. I would have had no clue what choices to make. And self-published authors just they know what they want and they go for it and they know how to make it happen. And I'm like, I wish I had that level of follow through in my life.
I think that's the great thing, though, is that there's different options for every kind of writer and every kind of business person.
Yeah.
And so if that's not your wheelhouse to be doing all of that on your own and spending your time doing that, then you don't have to. And if it is, you can have that kind of control now in publishing.
Absolutely. Yeah. I love that too. I constantly go back and forth and be like, oh, maybe I want to self-publish. No, I like the trad. I would like a hybrid model. What do I want to do? So I totally get it.
Okay, so I would love now to talk about that question of success, because like I mentioned in the intro, you were not the biggest fan of being called incredibly successful. And that actually got me thinking, are we making a mistake in how we view success? And also, you are Italian. So I'm wondering if this idea of success is actually kind of a particularly American point of view, because I was recently talking to my French teacher who is in Paris. She's Parisian. And she also didn't like the word successful. As soon as I said it, she visibly cringed. And so is it an American thing to focus on external markers like hitting bestseller lists and focusing on the number of books sold? I would love to know why you didn't like that label.
So I think for me, it's more, I mean, part of it is, it's such a complicated thing. I don't know if it's cultural or if it's more personal for me and just the person that I am. I am just a very anxious person. Like I have diagnosed anxiety. So I am like, I am here. Despite the meds, I am still anxious. And I don't like the idea of putting a whole lot of stock in something that I cannot really control. And success, as in, whether you sell a lot of books, whether you hit the bestseller lists, that's something that we as authors have little to no control over. I mean, we can write a book that we think is good, but like good writing and bad writing is such a subjective metric. And there are so many amazing books that are not bestsellers. So this is not to say that the books that become bestsellers are not good. Like I every single book that has been on the bestseller list that I have read, I have enjoyed, but or most of them at least. But like I don't know that, like I don't know that it's not vice versa. So I'm not saying all bestsellers are probably good, but not all good books are bestsellers. So I just don't love the idea that that is what makes me successful, just because it's something that can and probably will go away. Like most people's careers, not everyone. I mean, Nora Roberts has been out there writing bangers for the last 30 years. I don't know. But like a lot of people, like I was actually at lunch the other day with a writer who's local, and she has been a New York Times bestseller for years, and she kept telling me, or she told me a couple of times, that she had to reinvent herself several times. So this level of success is very, I don't even know, it's so temporary, and it's so it's really something that can just be taken away from you every second. Like I have a book out next month, and it literally could not be a bestseller. Like it could not do well, and then what do I, then I'm not successful anymore. So I just would rather think that I'm a successful writer because I write something that I'm happy with. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that
It's
was
just
actually going to be my next question for you then. Like, if you don't like using these external metrics, what is the better way? What's a healthier way to define success or fulfillment? How do you think of it for yourself? And how should other people be looking at it instead?
I mean, I think everyone should do what works best for them. What I know is that whenever I have let myself care too much about what was outside, like, I don't know, whenever I would still read Goodreads review, whenever I would still look at the bestseller list, whenever I would check the portal. So we have a sales portal. With Penguin Random House, and basically we can log in and see how many units we sold that week of audiobooks, ebooks for every single one of our books. And whenever I would check the portal obsessively, I would hate myself and my life, because I would always feel like, oh my God, I should be selling more. Oh my God, I bet my editor is not happy. I bet my team is disappointed in me. I bet they put all this effort and it didn't work out. So I just, to me, seems like, I don't know. That is, I don't know. I cannot use that as a metric, but it doesn't mean that other people can't. I mean, I think everyone should do what works for them. Um, I think maybe something that influences me is also the fact that my first book was very successful, but none of my other books have been as successful. So my career basically has been
But
so
nobody knows that. Well, now they do, but nobody knew it before.
I try to be as transparent as I can about it, because again, it's fine, it's okay. I'm still writing the books that I liked, right? And so there's that. But yeah, it's I guess what I'm saying is, for me, it's very easy to look at my sales and be like, whoa, I bet the people around me are disappointed because I'll never have a book that is as successful as my first one. So for me, what I had to do is just find other ways of kind of looking at my work and being happy about it. And that meant sort of just looking at myself and no one else. I think I am the only one who is not going to disappoint me in a way. Is this sad to say?
No, I love that actually. I think that's amazing. I love that using yourself as your own little world. I think it's incredibly healthy, and I think it is a way to just stay safe from comparison. It's especially hard, I think, in a creative field, because like you said, we don't actually have control in how well a book sells. Our publishers can do everything, like print so many arcs or galleys and do so many giveaways, but we don't know what the market wants. And at the same time, the bestseller lists, most people don't realize that they aren't actually based on real sales.
Yes, they are curated. Yeah. They are racist. Like this is Kennedy Ryan recently hit the New York Times, and she was the second Black woman, the second Black romance writer to hit it in like 2 years. The previous one was Tia Williams. So like
there are certain criteria they're looking for, like whether they're explicitly racist or not. They're also very judgmental about what is quality literature, and I think every list has certain things that they focus on, right? So like New York Times tends to be a bit more like they value literary quality, so-called literary. Wall Street Journal, when they had a list, it was more business focused. So I think it is deceptive. It's great to be able to say that we're both New York Times bestselling authors, like yay. But you can't guarantee it. We can't manufacture it. And there have been, I don't know about you, I mean, for me, I've had books that had actually sold more books than other books that made it onto the New York Times bestseller list, but I didn't make it that week or month for whatever reason, right? So
I mean, I wouldn't know that because I don't know the sales of other books, because again, I have like learned to like just separate myself. I have no idea how much I sell, let alone other people. But it's actually frustrating, because on the one hand, I am here saying I don't care about bestseller lists, but on the other, I absolutely like being able to write New York Times bestseller on your book is a privilege. Right. It's something that the sales people at publishers, they love this type of things because it's a way for them to position an author in a certain way. And so on the one hand, I'm like, fuck the lists. But on the other hand, you know, it's a privilege, it's a useful label. So I'm not even saying, like, in an ideal world, every single writer is a bestseller. And you know, yeah, it's such a complicated thing because on the one hand, it's easy to say I don't care, but I take advantage of that at the same time. It's very complicated.
Yeah, I totally agree. I want to talk about reinventing yourself, because I think that goes along with success. You're talking about the ability to continue to reinvent yourself as a writer, as an artist. And I'm curious, is that part of what you did earlier this year with Bride, moving away from the feminist stories and writing something paranormal? And then what about Not in Love, your new book, and going forward? Do you have a plan, or is it just write what strikes you at the moment?
Yeah, so the truth is that we went under contract for Bride. So my first book came out in 2021 in the fall, and then I signed my contract for Bride in the spring of 2022. And so it was, yeah, exactly. So it was before any other of my books came out. So at the time I didn't know that I would need a reinvention yet. I just really wanted to write a paranormal. And you know, what our agent said was something that was actually very wise. It was like, you know, this first book did really well. There is no guarantee that your next books will do as well. So this is your time to negotiate what you want to write with the publisher. And she knew that I wanted to write a werewolf book. So she was like, we put it in the contract and they have to publish it. So that was, you know, she's amazing. She's great. And that's how it happened. I wish I was a little bit more strategic about my career, because I look outside and I see authors who are more strategic, and I really, you know, I myself as a consumer of books, I'm a big reader. I read a lot of like Kindle Unlimited books, for example, and it's very useful for me when authors have a brand, because if I read a book and I like it, then I can go and read their entire backlist and devour it. So on the one hand, as a reader, I love it when consistent brand and I know what to expect. But as a writer, I don't know. I think I just cannot. I really struggle to write something that I don't want to write in that specific moment. So I think, yeah, for me, it's very much I don't know. It's whatever I really feel in that moment, whatever, you know, is nice to me. I just didn't have it in me to write a rom-com when I was writing Not in Love. And so I kind of got this fairly depressing book out. And, you know, it's a struggle because, again, I get really worried. I'm like, am I going to let down my team? My publisher has paid a lot for this book, and it's not going to sell as much as they expect. So there's part of me that feels really guilty about it, but there's another part of me that's like, Penguin and Mouse is a big evil corporation. They'll be fine. They'll be okay.
Penguin Random House is going to be okay.
They'll be fine.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's hard as a writer, because if you want this to be a long-term career, branding is great, like you said, for readers. But if you have to do this year after year after year, and you are now having to write the same thing, I do wonder if that's wise. Maybe it is better to diversify earlier on in your career so that your readers know, hey, it doesn't matter whatever Ali Hazelwood writes, it's still going to have that Ali Hazelwoodness, even if it's about werewolves, or if it's rom-com, or if it's a little bit more serious. I don't know. That's my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even know what Ali Hazelwoodness is. Like, it's so weird because I myself don't know what makes me different as a writer from other people. I feel like maybe something I should have put a little bit more thought into when you know, I started out writing, yeah, it's.
I think that what it is, it's just, if, as long as you are you, that quintessential part that is only you, that becomes that Ali Hazelwoodness. And because I've had readers say, oh, you wrote something different, but it still has that Evelynness too. And I think, well, I don't know what Evelynness is, right? But as long as I'm not trying to write like anybody else, I'm not trying to become to this or to that, and I'm just me, just a different part of me. I feel like that works probably for you and for anyone
Yeah.
who's writing or in any creative field, right? Like painting, drawing, etc.
I hope it's true. I hope it's something that we don't have to put too much thought in and just kind of like happens. So that would be amazing, honestly.
Okay, but you could always go back to neuroscience, which is something else I want to talk about, because you have left your job now as a neuroscience professor to focus on writing full time. And that must have been kind of a scary thing. I think for other people outside of it, they might think, oh, but you're a best-selling author, like you have this job security. But as we were just talking about, a career in the arts, you never really know. You know, you hope that it's long, but maybe you are the it girl for now and not in the future. So what was it like to leave? Because I was a lawyer in the past and I went to law school and I was a lawyer for 6 years and I didn't like it. I mean, I don't know, that might be the difference between you and me and your past career. But at the same time, I invested so many years into my education and then becoming good at this job that had financial security. And then I left it to become a full-time writer. Are we making a mistake here?
I totally get what you're saying. It's I mean, I liked neuroscience, but I definitely struggled with being in academia. So I had been thinking about maybe leaving academia, but in my head I would go, you know, into industry, or I would do other neuroscience related jobs. So I totally get what you're saying when it comes to like being ambivalent about it, because I also like being a neuroscientist and being an academic was such a big part of my identity. It's you know what I had studied for, you know, many years. I had a master's degree, I had a PhD. I had all of my friends were academic. Like I remember when I was considering, my husband is an academic, and when I was considering whether to quit, I remember looking at him and I was like, will you think less of me if I quit academia? Which is such a bonkers thing to ask now.
But it makes sense though in that moment, because that was the version of you that he fell in love with, right? And maybe he found it very appealing that you were in a very cerebral field. So I think it's a completely valid question.
Yeah, I mean, but I was like, will you think less of me if I give up? And it's you know, it ended up being, you know, a very stupid question, but at the time I felt a lot of angst about it. And you know, there was also that feeling that say what you want about yourself, or as a lawyer, me as a scientist. I don't know if I was a great scientist, but I was a trained scientist. Like I knew what I was doing. I had a degree to prove it. I had publications that were peer reviewed. You know, I had direct letters from my mentors. So I felt decent about myself as a scientist. And that is something that doesn't always work with writing. Sometimes you don't like the book you wrote. Sometimes you, I don't know, sometimes your book bombs critically and it doesn't sell as much. And you're like, whatever. I wouldn't have left my day job if I didn't have a husband with a day job. Like he's, you know, it's nice to know that he's out there providing us with health insurance and with like a salary that is stable.
Yeah, and I think that's a very fair thing to bring up, because I'm in the same situation where my husband, he has a normal job, right, where we know when the paycheck is coming. And that does give me the freedom to then pursue an artistic career. So I think a lot of people don't talk about that when they're putting out that dream of, I'm going to be a full-time writer or a full-time painter. It's not easy, but it is fulfilling. Right. So
it is absolutely, like, sometimes it's just so nice to be able to spend the entire day doing this thing that you really like. Sometimes you have an idea for something and like you just have to write it in that moment, and you get to be, you know, at home for a month and you just write what you want to be writing in that moment, and it's amazing. There are good sides of it, but yeah, definitely. And I mean, health insurance is a big issue. I would also argue, because I wouldn't be able to pay out of pocket for health insurance. Like it's so much. The premiums are so high. So that's another thing that I feel like it's what I tell people who are like thinking of quitting their jobs is like, are you okay with health insurance?
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing wrong with keeping a day job. And it is, you know, like we were saying, it might actually be advisable, because I also think that when you don't have financial pressure on your creativity, it allows you to be freer. and your work
Absolutely.
is just, I don't know, there's less pressure on it.
Yeah,
So that is,
I
it's a
agree.
luxury, it's a privilege that we both have, and I'm very grateful for that. But let's talk about like the good things, the great things. What do you love about being an author?
That was, I feel like that was so depressing. I
No,
think it's
let's be
because,
happy now.
sorry. No, I mean, I love just again, I love when I can write what I want to write, and I love the idea that I like many people have access to my work. It's just so good to know that if someone wants to read my work, they can, I can get it in their hands. That's like so amazing. Like just sharing stories. To me, sharing stories is such a like the quintessential human activity. Like this is what we're here for, to share stories and pass the time before we die. It's again, it sounds depressing, but I mean in a good way. And it's just such an
Absolutely.
honor to be able to do it with so many other people, you know, and so that's amazing. I love the author community. The romance community in particular is like, I hear like other writers who write in other genres are like, oh my God, it's such a like, my community is so backstabbing and bad, and I have no friends. And I'm like, I have not met a single not kind person in the romance writing community. Everyone has been really lovely. Even I have a YA book, and the people that I met in the YA world have also been incredibly lovely. So I just really, really love that. That is amazing. And just generally, I feel like I don't know. I feel like sometimes I really feel like I found my people first within
Mhm.
fandom places and within author places. I feel like everyone is a little bit odd, and that is
In like
kind
the
of
very
what
best of
I.
ways.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like sometimes when I am out there in the world, I am a little too weird, and but like in the I don't know, in the writing world, we are all a little weird, and that is a relief for me.
We are book people
Um,
are the best people.
yes, exactly. And yeah, so I love that. And yeah, what else is amazing? And oh my God, and I've had so many amazing experiences with readers as well. Just like this ability to connect with others. I have taken so many trips where I was like, wow, I cannot believe, like, I'm here, I am in Brazil, and I am bonding with people over the liking the same books.
Mhm.
And you know, it's been so fun. Like same thing in I don't know, in Germany and in Mexico. I've just gotten to meet people that I wouldn't have met otherwise, and sometimes it's very brief, sometimes it's literally a connection of 15 seconds, but like there would be times, I don't know, I remember I was in Mexico and this guy told me, I broke up with my boyfriend today, but it's okay because I'm meeting you now, so like the day is ending on a good note. And I was like, this is just such a, I don't know, such a nice moment to have with someone, you know? And that would never have happened to me otherwise if I wasn't writing books. So that's been really cool. And then really just the ability to tell the stories you want to
Mhm.
tell, you
Mhm.
know?
So, what advice would you have for someone who was embarking on a writing career and wanted to follow your footsteps or be able to do all these amazing things like you get to do? Someone getting started, what would your advice be?
Yeah, it's so hard because I feel so unqualified to give any sort of advice. I guess my main advice is always writing is going to be a very solitary thing. So make sure that you have friends or like people who support you in your journey, like people out there, and they can be other writers. It's ideal, I think, to have other people who sort of understand a little bit about writing, but it can be your husband who's a carpenter, really. Like he can be just someone who believes in you and who's going to be there when you're feeling rejected or you're feeling like it's not going anywhere. And then again, like such a boring advice, but I think you can only write to market and force yourself to write to market if it's something you don't really want to write for a very limited amount of time.
Mhm. Mhm.
So I'm not saying don't think about what is selling and what isn't selling, because that would be like I myself, like I had an idea for a book and I literally asked our agent, if I write this, do you think we have any hope of selling it? Because I also think about that. But do make sure that you're writing something that you also enjoy yourself, because otherwise it's unsustainable. It's such a, you spend so much time with your characters and your stories. You have to like them at least a little bit.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic advice. Don't just write to chase money and what you think will make you money. Make sure that you are still being true to yourself, right, as an artist and the stories that you want to tell. I love that.
But I also think that it's fair to want to, sell a book. Like I totally get that. I don't want to sound like,
I think that's important because I think that writers, especially, they have a hard time asking for what they deserve and like understanding the value of the work that they create. There's so much writing and art that's given away for free, and there is now an expectation, I feel, online for things to just be free. So it's really difficult, especially for women, I feel, to be able to come out and say, hey, I created this thing. I put in a year or two of my life. And now I would love if you would pay a small amount of money to have this thing that I made for you. It is beautiful. It is for you.
Totally. And, again, another thing, which, sorry, I'm like, I'm not qualified to give advice now, 40 pieces of advice. But like another thing is, and I say as a traditionally published author, there are a lot of like ways to get to publication, and traditional publishing is by no means the only valid one. I know that a lot of people are like, oh, if my book is not published by a big 5 publisher, or big 4 now, I guess. Well, no, still big 5. It's not going to be something that my parents can be proud of, but that is crap. Like there are self-published people out there who are writing books that have changed my life. So, yeah, that's another one.
I agree. I think that's fantastic. Okay. Do you want to do a lightning round where we do really quick fire questions? Okay. 1 sentence or less. Ready? Okay. Do you prefer hardcovers, paperbacks, ebooks, or audiobooks?
Ebooks.
What is something you absolutely must have before you start writing?
My laptop. That's it.
You're so practical. You're such a scientist. Okay, why do all of your rom-com protagonists seem like Adam Driver?
Because have you seen Adam Driver?
Yes.
Have you looked at him? How can you ask me this question after looking at him?
But there are other men in the world, Ali.
That is true. Okay, people are still like, oh, Adam Driver. But the truth is that in the last 1, 2, 3 books, I have been obsessed with another actor. But I am not going to say who it is, because otherwise everyone is going to be like, oh, she writes only for this actor. But like, Adam Driver was not who I had in mind when I wrote
that's fair. That's fair. Because once we all heard that, you're right. We all just started thinking that every single protagonist was every love interest was Adam. Okay.
I mean, fine. I'm gonna be real. The other actor is also very tall and very muscly, so I get it. But
that's fine. That's fine. You have a type, a book boyfriend type. Okay. What is one book that you've read recently that made you think?
Forged in Blood by Ehigbor Okosun.
Oh, okay. I will have to look that up. Okay. Do you have a lightning round question for me?
What is the first one of your books that you would want your daughter to read?
Oh my gosh, she's already read almost all of them.
What was the first one that you gave her?
She's even read some of the romancy ones. The first one she read, I think, might have actually been Circle of Shadows, which was my 3rd book. It was when I was still writing YA, but that was a younger YA. Because The Crown's Game, which was my very first book, it's historical fantasy, and she was only 10. And so I thought that, or she was 10 when she started reading my books, when I thought she was old enough to read my books. But I thought 10 was still a little too young to be reading historical, written with, like kind of older language. So Circle of Shadows, which was basically about like magical ninjas, that was a huge hit for her 4th grade class. And apparently I caused some trouble, because whenever the kids had free time, they'd be whispering in the corner like, oh my gosh, did you know that on the page, blah, 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 they kissed? Like, sorry, Mr. Robinson, for disrupting your class.
Okay, so what was the reaction? Like, was she reading and she was like, "Oh my God, Mom, you wrote this?" Like, what was the reaction?
Now, I think when you grow up with your mom as an author, it's just normal. So I believe she was 7 when my first book was published. And so she had kind of been on that journey with me, watching me write for so many years and wanting to get published and then finally getting published. So she was really happy for me. But at the same time, it's not that special when I write books. All my friends write books. I can ask my publisher to
Yeah.
send me free books, and I give them all to her. I had one of my best friends was the events director at a local indie bookstore at Kepler's, where you've been.
Oh yeah,
And
yeah.
so whenever they were done with ARCs, she would say, "Hey, do you think your daughter would like this?" So I would just come home with bags of books. Anyway, this has been so much fun. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. Before we leave, tell our viewers and listeners where they can find you online.
At this point, I am really only consistently on Instagram, Ali Hazelwood. That's it.
Awesome.
And I have a website, alihazelwood.com, that I sometimes remember to update.
Fantastic. Well, we will be on Instagram then and checking your website every couple of years.
That is the accurate schedule of a book.
All right, for everyone out there, don't forget to pick up Ali's latest book, Not in Love, which is now in bookstores everywhere. Thank you so much, Ali, for being on Creative, Inspired, and Happy. Want more writing advice and career insight? Join thousands for free at creativeinspiredhappy.com to go behind the scenes with best-selling authors and get access to our book club for writers, creativity challenges, and more. I can't wait to see you there.